and also to look at filling out your surveys for today's content.
Hi everybody, good afternoon. My name is Ron Winward. I am Security Evangelist for Radware for North America. And prior to joining Radware, I was at Server Central and NLayer for a very long time, where I learned a whole lot about how to handle volumetric DDoS attacks. I learned a whole lot from this community. I've been a member of the mailing list for 8 or 9 years now. It's an honor to be here and to talk with all of you today, so thank you. At Server Central, as I said, and NLayer, we were really good at being creative about handling volumetric attacks and how to handle big attacks inside of our network. But there were other needs that we had, and we looked at some solutions out there and ultimately chose Radware to help with some of those and specific examples of attacks. And here I am, almost a year now at Radware. So what we're going to talk about today is the DDoS marketplace. We're going to talk about I'm going to start off with a little story to kind of set a framework for us. We're going to talk about, does hacking pay? We're going to present both sides of that. Does it pay for people to attack our networks? How are they attacking our networks? What are the tools that they're using? How are these available to them? There's a whole marketplace that we're going to talk about. Some of it's darknet, some of it's clearnet. And we're going to wrap up with a review of maybe a different look on the ROI on protecting our networks. So we'll start off with that story. In 1886, a gentleman named Frank Doria attended an Ohio State Fair, and he found a one-cylinder, 4 horsepower motor that he thought, you know what, this is probably strong enough to power my horseless carriage. So Charles Doria was an accomplished bicycle mechanic with his brother Frank. And they went to work, and in 5 years, after 5 years of work, they came up with their first version of the horseless carriage, the powered horseless carriage, their first automobile. And then they advanced 5 more years. By 1896, they became the first commercially produced automobile manufacturer in the United States. Before 1900. I didn't know that. Many of you probably didn't know that. A lot of us think that Henry Ford is the person who we attribute to the automobile, but Henry Ford didn't even actually get into manufacturing automobiles until 1901, and the Ford Motor Company didn't start till 1903. So we've got a couple years of good, maybe 15 years of good experience in the market and developing cars, but Henry Ford is the guy who we think of, right? And so we attribute that to a lot of different things. We attribute that to advancements in manufacturing, and Henry Ford is attributed to really economizing on the assembly line. We have advancements in infrastructure, roads. Henry Ford took that recipe and took the recipe of the right price and the right product, and combined that with the right economic situation. We had the Roaring '20s. World War I had ended, and we have the right recipe for Henry Ford to be the guy who we think of with automobiles, right? So this story is a little bit familiar. We kind of see a similar type of situation happening right now with how people attack us. We'll talk about a lot of examples today. We're going to show you real examples of how the data that is out there, screenshots of things for sale. Everybody in this room knows what's happened in the last month in terms of the volume of the volumetric attributes of attacks. We are seeing things change very, very fast, right? And we are at this tipping point of cyber security or cyber attacks in our networks. And we think that there are 3 interesting aspects that make this up. We have more resources, so the people who are attacking us have access to better tools, many, many options for tools. We have more targets. For us as people who operate networks, we have a lot of things that are valuable on our network. Maybe it's digital assets, maybe it's intellectual property, maybe it's customer records. We're going to talk about some of those too. And we have more maturity. We have been dealing with DDoS attacks for a very long time. The people who have been doing DDoS attacks have had a lot of years for getting better at it. So it's a pretty similar recipe, I think. So we think that hacking has turned the corner, right? So we'll take a kind of a step back here. Hollywood romanticizes hacking, and hacking there is an interesting attribute to it, that's somewhat of a romantic attribute to it. I happened to watch, these are a bunch of movies. I happened to watch Sneakers again this weekend and had gone through some interesting things there. Swordfish is the movie where they reference a DS3 connected to a computer that allowed 7 networks at once to be accessed, and that was just amazing. We joke about the IP addresses being wrong in this stuff. So to us, this is kind of funny and in jest, but it's also, Hollywood sets a picture of hackers for us. This last one, We Are Legion, if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix and YouTube, and it's a good one to see because it's more of a realistic documentary of what was happening with Anonymous recently. But the reality is that the people attacking us probably look more like the team on the left than the gentleman on the right. Now, this again is just imagery and put out there, but the reality is that the gentleman on the right is probably working in the cold aisle in the data center, and in fact, I think you can see the cold air blasting onto him there. But the point of this is that there is organization in the network, in the people that are attacking us, and let's talk about this slide. This is a slide from Hewlett-Packard, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, that was a study that showed there are organizational structure attributes to networks and people who are attacking us, right? We have employees, we have paid employees who are people whose job is to do recon in a network. We have bonuses for good work. We have obviously a big take on bounty or things that were taken out of a network. Here we see this graphic shows different functions that a person might play in an organization that is perpetuating crime. And we think that because increasingly the answer is that crime is paying, right? So let's take another look at this. Dr. Larry Ponemon and his group, the Ponemon Institute, has done some of the best work on quantifying the impact of attacks onto networks. This is a very hard thing to do, and they've done a great job with it. This is a report that Ponemon Institute has done with Palo Alto Networks, and there were a couple good bullet points that I wanted to pull out of here. Most interesting to me, their study says that the average hacker or attacker earns approximately 1/4 of the salary of the average IT employee. So that swings the pendulum in the other way, right? Part of what they found is that the cost and time to complete attacks has decreased because of better access to better tools and better things out there. But the one point that I would make is that, in contrast to that first point, nobody goes into this being average, wanting to be average. Nobody plays high school, plays football wanting to stop in high school. Every kid dreams of being in the pros and taking that big haul, and that I think is why people continue to do that. This graphic also comes from that HP document. It's The Business of Hacking. It's a pretty good document if you were interested in reading it. But it talks about the value of certain assets and their ease or difficulty of attaining them, right? So credit cards, which were once the most sought after asset, are really not as valuable anymore. And I'm sure, just like me, many of you have changed your credit card numbers or reissued your credit cards this year or last year because this is the world we live in today, right? So the longevity of these assets is not as attractive to people taking them. But in contrast, medical records are hugely profitable. Medical records are all of the PII information that you need for identity theft, and it's a lot harder to change your address and all of the things that come from medical records. Intellectual property is up there. Credentials has been found to be even. A lot of us are used to credential breaches, and so we are aware as users that we have to use diverse passwords and change them frequently. I think although it's still a problem, we're more and more educated, so the value of them has not become an increasing or a decreasing kind of thing. This arrow says vulnerabilities are pointing down. They, I believe, are pointing up. We're going to talk about some vulnerabilities and exploits the same. There was a company called Zerodium who was offering first $1 million bounty for exploits on an iPhone, on iOS. And then I read that it was increased to $1.5 million. And then I read that it was paid. But there's some skepticism in the community that says, where's the proof? You know, this is potentially a publicity stunt, but you know, an interesting attribute. So we have $1 million that you can make with exploits. I'm going to go through some examples. These are screenshots of actual attacks. A hacker this summer called the Dark Overlord gained a lot of popularity for taking information from big breaches and posting them for sale online. I don't list this to point out anybody who was affected by this, just the reality of what's there. So, in this first example, the Dark Overlord he breached 3 healthcare networks with a remote desktop protocol vulnerability, RDP, and 3 separate networks was able to gain some of this information. The first auction that was listed for sale was 400,000 or so healthcare records of customers in Georgia, listing them for just over 600 Bitcoin. That's $350,000. Central and Midwest, same attack, 210,000 records, 303 Bitcoin, about $175,000. 48,000 records in Missouri, 151 Bitcoin, or about $87,000. So if the Dark Overlord sells this one time on the real deal, which we'll talk about the real deal, he stands to make $600,000, $700,000, maybe with some other stuff, and just by selling it one time. Right? This crime pays, right? Here's another example, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a legitimate currency, right? There was an attack on Bitfinex, which is the 3rd largest Bitcoin exchange in the world, based in Hong Kong. A gentleman or an attacking party breached the exchange, stole 119,000 Bitcoins, $72 million of take from breaching Bitfinex. So much so that I hope that you can see this in the back. This is a 30-day view of the value of Bitcoin. There was a 20% decrease in the value of Bitcoin the day that the news was released. 20% impact, a financial impact from a simple hack. Not a simple hack, I don't mean to say that it's simple, but from a hack, a 20% decrease in the value of a legitimate currency. And now there's a new attribute to that. There's a $3.5 million reward for information leading to the recovery of these Bitcoins. So, you know, it could pay to steal that, and it could pay to return it, right? This graph may look familiar to a bunch of us. Earlier in about the springtime, there was some discussion in the mail thread about DDoS attacks, and a gentleman named Jair Santana posted a response discussing some of his research. This is a graph from his website called Booter Blacklist, and he has developed an algorithm that has looked at some of the Alexa database and scraped information off of the web to look for booter and stressor websites. Now, booter and stressors are volumetric attack tools, right? Booter coming from the term of booting people off of gaming networks, and stressors coming from maybe adding legitimacy to the service of stress testing your network, right? So Jair and his colleagues' work found approximately 400, maybe more, 430 or so, publicly accessible booter and stressor services available on the ClearNet. So back to the story of the Ford and the automobile. You know, between that time, there were about 200 or so startup car companies. And we think about Henry Ford, right? Here's another similarity, right? We've got 400 or so booter and stressor services available on the ClearNet where any one of us could go and buy an attack for very little amounts of money. In this example, for as little as $6, you can order a 5 to 10 gig volumetric attack lasting 10 minutes or more. I pay more than that to ship a return back to Amazon, right? That's nothing. $6 could really put somebody's lights out for you know, when they need it most. More on the economics, ransom. Ransom was a big thing in the past maybe year and a half, 2 years to year and a half. where Armada Collective, bless you, Armada Collective and Lizard Squad were sending emails that say, I am going to attack you. Pay me this many Bitcoin to this address, just so that you know I'm serious. Here comes an attack, and forward this to any decision maker in your network who can pay us. They made a good amount of money for a long time. We recently did a report at Radware that showed that 1 in 7 people have say they have been ransomed in the past year. And of the people that paid, this is a really big distribution, a difference in what we've seen. But in the US, $7,500 was the average ransom paid. In the United Kingdom, £22,000 was the average ransom that was paid. That's a lot of money. So on the success of these ransom attacks, we have copycats, right? So this is pretty clever. Those ransom emails were sent. Some of it had kind of went quiet for a while, and then earlier this year, we saw copycats. People sending very similar type of messages, sometimes from domains that were registered that same day. And most of these did not include, the same letter, more or less, most of them did not include the volumetric attack that is what we call a warning shot. But think back to those stressors, those booters and stressors. For $6 or whatever, you can send that warning shot for very little investment here. So think about what the economics of this now, right? I've got maybe a VPS somewhere that I get for a couple dollars for a month. I send an email, I register a domain name, and I do some administrative work. And maybe if I want to, I add another $6 attack. But I send these fake emails going on the coattails of what had happened in the community. And these guys reportedly made $100,000 in about 6 weeks of work for just sending email. That's crazy. A different aspect of the economics of attacks. So this is a recent one. There are new updates to this just as recently as this weekend, but we have the NSA hack that we know about, the shadow brokers, an actor who has said, we have breached the Equation Group being associated as the elite hacking team for the NSA. The same team that did the Stuxnet attack in Iran to dismantle or attack their nuclear program. So there was a breach of their attack tools, and the shadow brokers released it to the public, and they put it up for auction. And they said, the highest bidder will win the tools, but anybody else who bids is lose-lose. They lose the bid, they don't win the auction, and they lose their money. You don't get your money back. And then they said if 1 million Bitcoin were raised, which is $572 million, they would release all of the tools to the public. That's a big hack. That's a big take, and it takes a little chutzpah to kind of go out and do that one too. The update to this, since the slides were submitted, was over the weekend. They have canceled the auction, and now they are crowdfunding this, so to the tune of 10,000 Bitcoins, which is about $6 million. So hopefully they are hoping that they're going to get $6 million. And just about 10 days ago, somebody was arrested with the correlation of some of this, so I wonder, have they changed their tune to try and get something before the heat comes on them as well? Again, with the NSA, there's another side to this. There's a negative impact to us in this room, right? So we know about the NSA Prism Project, information that was leaked by Edward Snowden, but that has had impact to us as internet operators and internet businesses. Companies have started avoiding the United States for doing business here. Brazil has some pretty important laws about or regulations about not having certain content inside of the US or even traverse the US. Brazil is even building a submarine cable to Europe to completely bypass the US. So there's an impact for us. The ITIF has said that the loss of business from this, $35 billion to us and to related companies, right? But then Forrester Research came back and said, you know what, we think this is going to be a lot bigger. We think it's $180 billion. So there's a negative impact for us for this stuff. So all of this stuff, we're going to talk about how people attack us and what's there how they get access to it, and what we could do about it. So this is the guy from the Men's Warehouse, I guarantee it. The cyber attack marketplace is there's a complete marketplace for cyber marketplace for for criminals and e-commerce. Mostly on the darknet. Some of it is on the clearnet. Most places are available for everybody, but some places require that you commit a crime to gain access to them. Some of them, quite interestingly, show they'll give you a target that you have to hack, and if you are able to do it, then you gain access to their marketplace. If not, sorry. The most common current, Bitcoin is the other attribute to this. I think that Bitcoin has really driven the success of these marketplaces as well. Bitcoin is largely anonymous, largely launderable, largely easy to make this all happen, right? It's not completely anonymous, not completely untrackable, but it's the fluidity has made this stuff more successful, I think. So they have a full marketplace that's readily available to them. We'll talk about some of these. Some of the most popular, Hell, AlphaBay. I've got some AlphaBay. These are the real deal. AlphaBay, Valhalla, Hansa, the real deal. The real deal is actually now offline as of about 11 days ago. The real deal gained its popularity when Peace of Mind had released all of his breaches or downloads that were available for sale. So they were all done on the real deal, so it gained a lot of popularity. 10 days ago or so, 11 days ago, it's now offline and unreachable. But you can buy anything. You can buy much more things that are outside of the realm of cybersecurity. But for us, DDoS services, the tools for hacking, tools for cyber attacks, PII lists. And you don't need to look far. On the ClearNet, on the left is an example that we're going to dive into more, but this was a company called Vidas. You can find auctions and listings for things in real legitimate websites. And you can find people advertising their information on hacker forums in both the ClearNet and the Darknet. And people market their services, right? Just like real businesses. Back to that model of business. For all of these people who are doing this, how do you become the next Vidas or the next Shenron attack tool? It's becoming the best at it, right? It's the best service, it's customer service. So here's an example of people marketing. Poodle Corp, who recently also got in trouble around the same time of 10 days or so ago, said on Twitter, these upcoming attacks are coming courtesy of Poodle Corp. And then EA Sports said, sorry folks, we're down. And then Poodle Corp said, yep, that was us. So that was what we call stunt hacking, advertising what you're doing. Social media, NetStressor in this example, this was a Twitter post that said, we are responsible for taking down this pro-ISIS website. So it's a form of advertising, right? Forums, our community, we're used to forums to find anything any research or information that we might need, but this exists on the Darknet too. Customer service, again, back to that being a successful business. This is an example from somebody of what they offer. There's a professional website, there's client support, auto buy, all of these things that try to make a better user experience to the person buying so that they come back and that they gain the reputation of being the best business, the best service out there. And then there are also things that you'll never find, you and I will never find. And it just is a matter of how it's done, right? A lot of it is personal interaction and reputation and things that we'll just never have access to. All of these things are available as a service. So I mentioned before the Shenron attack tool. Shenron attack tool was one of the biggest. It is the Lizard Squad's public stressor service that is available on the ClearNet. There were 3 payload attacks available. I'm sure that the people in this room have been on the bad end of this, either having it transiting our network or perhaps targeting our network. But here in this example, they've got 8 different price points for different services that you can buy. And these guys were were recently, and again in that 10 days or so ago time frame, these guys were arrested. Now, the interesting point here is that these guys are 19-year-old men. The men who were taken into custody for this, 19-year-old men, and have been operating one of the best, most well-known stressor services out there. So don't make the mistake that somebody who might be that age has any correlation into sophistication with this stuff, and I think it would be a mistake to do that. So they were recently taken offline. Vidas, maybe about 2 weeks ago, had maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, had some attention. These are 18-year-old men from Israel who were operating this site. 13 different attack vectors were available for $19.99. You can launch a big attack. It was one of the most popular tools. They had customer service. They had, like, if somebody needed a question, it would send messages, text messages to their cell phones, and it was really run like a real business, right? 18-year-old men. This site was running for 4 years. So the media says that the first 2 years they cleared $600,000 US. So we can deduce that in the 4 years of operation, these 18-year-old men probably cleared $1 million attacking us and beating up our networks. You can get anything, right? Here's somebody advertising email hacking for 0.35 Bitcoin. That's about $200. Social media hacking for 0.4 Bitcoin. One of the things that's on here that I love, grade changes. For half a Bitcoin, for $300. Is that a half a Bitcoin? Yeah. I can potentially change your grade, right? I think that we're going to see people, some of this stuff changing, right? And we're to the point of, I can, for 4 Bitcoin, I can say that you went to Stanford or you went somewhere, right? What's to stop that? I'm going to dig into another example here. There are job boards, right? This is jobs for hackers. This is the Craigslist of the darknet, where you can list your services, or you can request services, like Mia here, who went to UC Davis and said, I need a grade change ASAP. I'll tip you well. Please contact me at this Gmail account, which I've done her a favor maybe and blocked out, or her Wicker account. But this is real. This is happening, right? This is amazing to me. So everything that you need also, right? DDoS as a service you can buy. This is on the Real Deal. An example from the Real Deal. Botnet Rental, here's another example. Somebody offering PC machines, mobile Android phones, like a botnet of 40,000 devices, that can be used to, I think it's 500 SMS attacks per second. That would be a bad day for somebody who had to deal with that. Here's a malware ransom ad from AlphaBay, one of the other marketplaces, where somebody can buy a malware to attack your network, right? These marketplaces are so legitimate that they offer escrow services for payment. So I want to buy something, I put money into escrow, a third-party escrow, I receive the service, and then the payment is released to add legitimacy to the service. That's how advanced this is. This I thought was very interesting. Here's a company called ServNet Networks that there is another ServNet Networks. I don't believe it's the same as on the ClearNet, but this is Darknet Hosting, right? This is for $89. You can get an unmetered 1 gig server completely on the darknet, right? And up to, on this example, there's more there, but up to $120. And it's priced just like every other legitimate service. And it very well might be legitimate, just because you're on the darknet doesn't mean that you're doing nefarious things, but it's interesting, legitimate business on the darknet. Here's somebody offering a ZeroDay Exploit for Telegram, 11 Bitcoin, again, escrow available. WordPress accounts, data leak, fraud, leaked admin credentials, it's all out there. This is one that I thought was very interesting. Here is somebody advertising an exploit to a certain kind of router. They say that there's 250,000 of these routers out there. They're RCE capable, so I can do remote code exploits and execution on them. And in the notes here, they say, which you certainly can't see, there are 250,000 of these available in China, and for 5 Bitcoin, $3,500, you can have your own botnet of these machines. So, the economics of, what can we do moving forward? All of this and all of us having to defend this in our network has really created a point of we have a lot of spending, right? And things change, and so the technologies change, and we have spent a lot of money to helping protect our networks, right? We have the traditional stuff, the firewalls, web application firewalls. We buy more servers and load balancers and DDoS protection. And then on the cloud side of things, we buy cloud instances for replication or disaster recovery, and we buy dedicated links to our cloud. And we have business implications. We have SLAs for customers that we have to meet if our service is not available. We have profits. We have cyber insurance that we buy. For the people side, we train people, we hire people. We hire people to do audits of our networks and pen testing, right? It's very expensive here. So a lot of people, we grunt when it's time to say, I gotta spend more money on my security. So the ROI for security is really the holy grail for IT, right? If you can find the right thing that is the right price point and does everything that we need, if that exists, that's our holy grail, right? Things have stood in our way of that, right? So the definition of return varies greatly by our role. I have another slide that will talk about how certain people define the return differently, right? Poor visibility into an actual attack until it's too late. A lot of times we get attacked and then we are reactive. Then we say, oh, I need to prepare for this so that it happens, if it happens again, I'm prepared. I need the right tools. I need the right tools to dissect the information that happened. I need the right tools to protect my network. A lack of understanding of whether or not you fit an attacker's profile. If not knowing that you have something that is worth taking or worth attacking you for is one reason people don't understand this. Overlooking the actual cost of manual mitigation. We'll talk about that. I personally have done a whole lot of that. And then the hidden costs of processing this attack traffic. We'll go through an example of this. But the business manager is going to define the return very differently than a risk manager will, or a compliance manager, or you and I, who are actually driving the network and having to handle what has happened, right? So we have things right now that we think, it's maybe an even scale, right? I've got compliance, I've got revenue and brand assurance, and I've got job security, but the investment, I get security budget, I get staff and management and operational risk. But if I can look at other things, I can maybe help look at the cost of this differently, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about. As somebody who handled attacks, we had a very big network. We had at Server Central and NLayer, we were very good at handling attacks, volumetric attacks. We had great MX960s that we could quickly do firewall filters and fingerprints and log traffic and very quickly identify and then block an attack. Sometimes it was flow spec to block traffic transiting, from peering ports in San Jose or something. But we were good at it. But that's the volumetric side of things, and it's network layer stuff, and it's reactive, right? I've got to fingerprint my attack. Maybe I have some tools with NetFlow, but I've got to fingerprint my attack and then make deploy the solution. That can take some time, especially if it's the middle of the night and you're on call, right? So we look to automation sometimes to say, well, what can I do to make this easier, right? Maybe it's just the fingerprinting of the attack that is a little bit easier. Maybe it's the whole bit, right? So as engineers, we should be thinking of automation. How much do we spend over provisioning for bad traffic? At our networks, at Server Central and NLayer, we spent a lot of money intentionally to be able to carry traffic, right? And that was our business model, and we were good at it. But not everybody has that. That came with a lot of optic costs and dark fiber costs and cross-connect MRCs and a lot of router real estate. It was not inexpensive to be able to do that. Not everybody can do that, and not everybody has that ability in their business, right? And that's not their job to be able to over-provision for a huge attack, right? So one example of a customer that we have they took attack traffic, or bogus garbage traffic that was coming into their network, and they were able to reduce 100 terabytes of traffic traversing their network with an operational cost of $1 million a year. So I don't mean to say that we are the only ones. That this is not a product pitch. It's to make you think about if you can maybe reallocate certain money or think about it differently. Maybe you don't have to have to carry that traffic in your network, right? Just something to consider. So let's bring it home again with Henry Ford. Henry Ford, great man, took advantage of the right environmental conditions, his own ingenuity, his own thinking of how to do things differently, and made a great success with the automobile industry. I do not draw a comparison between Henry Ford and cyber attack criminals. One is a great man, one are felons and criminals, and that's not what I'm here to say. But the similarity is there, right? So our security posture has to change, right? We have more resources available to us, and they don't all have to be paid, right? They don't have to. There are plenty of good tricks and free ways to help protect yourself. There are more targets. We're putting more information out there that needs to be protected, and the protections are more mature, right? So we have advancements in AI for automation, for protection and algorithms, or protecting in algorithms, and people who are aware, right, and who have dealt with attacks for a long time. So that might be tipping in our direction as well as network people. So last slide. Personally, I love the idea of automation. It can help me either identify an attack or let me know about it before my customer calls about it. Consider automation. Simplify with services. Maybe you don't have the staff who wants to go in and do this. Or sometimes these things plug along doing their job, and then you only have to look at it once a month, but then you forget what to do, that one time a month. So managed services are available from companies. Cover your blind spots. This is a big thing. Attacks, there are smokescreen attacks, right? So that big volumetric attack with multiple payloads that's very complex might be just to divert your attention from the small web attack that's happening, because all hands are on deck trying to figure out how the heck we're going to stop this volumetric attack and how we're going to divert and everything else, right? The other side to that, cover your blind spot, SSL. If you have application layer stuff that is encrypted, you're going to need a way to be able to crack open that payload and take a look at whether something's good or bad. And visibility. I'm a huge data nerd. Visibility, there are plenty of free tools. There are plenty of great commercial tools. The more data, to a point, the more data that you have to be able to make an actionable decision in your network, the better. I'm a huge proponent of NetFlow. I love the data that I can extract from the network to see what has happened for forensics, and I love the idea of automation to let me know when something's happening in real time. So with that, I'll open up for any questions, and we'll also be here throughout the day as well. Okay, well, if you are shy and want to talk to me independently, I look forward to it. So thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.